The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as my daughter's voice echoed through the garage door connecting to our house. "Dad's just a mechanic, Mom. You deserve so much better than this dump." I wiped my hands on the oil-stained rag, staring at the classic Mustang I'd been restoring for the past 3 months. At 42, I'd built Jenkins Auto Repair from nothing into something respectable in our fading Midwest town of Millbrook. The kind of place where everyone knows your business and half the population works at the dying steel plant on the outskirts. "Tom, dinner's ready," Sophie called from the kitchen, her voice carrying that familiar edge of irritation. I walked through the door, still wearing my work clothes. Sophie sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing furiously. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe bun she wore to her corporate job downtown. At 38, she'd climbed the ladder at Morrison Financial, and lately, she never let me forget it. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Had a customer's transmission give out. Mrs. Patterson needed her car for work tomorrow." "Of course you did." She finally glanced at me, her blue eyes cold. "Lila's eating at Madison's house. Again." Our 17-year-old daughter had been avoiding family dinners for weeks. Not that we had many real conversations anyway. Sophie's phone buzzed constantly with work calls, and when she wasn't on the phone, she was typing emails. I sat down across from her. "How was your day?" She didn't answer, just kept typing. "Sophie? I'm busy, Tom. Some of us have important work to do." That stung, but I pushed it down. "Want to watch a movie tonight? That new thriller you mentioned?" She finally looked up, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before. Contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. "I have a conference call with the Seattle office at 9. Then I need to prepare for tomorrow's presentation. Maybe find something else to do." The next morning, I woke up alone. Sophie's side of the bed was cold, like she'd been gone for hours. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Emergency work trip. Back Sunday. Don't wait up." It was Tuesday. That Sunday came and went. No Sophie, no phone calls, no texts. By the second week, I was calling her office. "Mrs. Jenkins? Sophie's in meetings all day. I'll have her call you back." She never did. Week 3, I drove to Morrison Financial downtown. The receptionist, a young woman with bright red lipstick, smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jenkins. Sophie's been working on a special project with Mr. Morrison. Very hush-hush. She's barely been in the office." Ethan Morrison, Sophie's boss. 40-something, divorced, drove a silver BMW that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. I'd met him once at the company Christmas party, firm handshake, perfect smile, and eyes that looked right through me like I was furniture. Week 4, I found the phone. Sophie had come home briefly to grab more clothes. I was under the hood of a customer's Honda when I heard her heels clicking across the garage floor. By the time I cleaned up and got inside, she was gone again. But she'd left her gym bag behind. Inside, wedged between her yoga mat and water bottle, was a cheap burner phone I'd never seen before. The text messages made my stomach drop. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Room 247. E. Your husband suspect anything? E. Tom's clueless. Too busy with his little cars to notice anything. S. Good. Keep it that way. What we have is too good to risk. E." The photos were worse. Sophie in lingerie I'd never seen. Sophie in hotel rooms I'd never been to. Sophie laughing and happy in ways she hadn't been with me in years. Hotel receipts showed a pattern going back 6 months. The Grandview Hotel, 2 towns over. Always the same room. Always charged to Morrison Financial Business Development. I sat in my garage until 3 in the morning, staring at that phone. 20 years of marriage, a daughter together, a life we'd built from nothing when we were kids ourselves, fresh out of high school, full of dreams and plans. All of it a lie. The next evening, Sophie came home like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen where I was making dinner, grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, and sat down at her usual spot. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Long, complicated. You wouldn't understand." I set down my spatula and turned to face her. "Try me." She looked up from her phone, annoyed. "Tom, I'm not in the mood for one of your needy conversations. Some of us have real responsibilities." "Real responsibilities?" "Yes. Real work, real problems. Not just changing oil and rotating tires." I stared at her. This woman I'd loved since we were teenagers. This woman I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. This woman who used to curl up against me on Sunday mornings and talk about our dreams. "Where have you been, Sophie?" "Working. I told you." "For a month?" "It's a big project. Very important. Career-making, actually." She smiled, and there was something cruel in it. "Not that you'd understand what that means?" I turned back to the stove, gripping the spatula so hard my knuckles went white. "Right, of course." "Tom." Her voice had that patronizing tone she used when explaining things to Lila. "I know this is hard for you to understand, but some people have ambitions beyond this little town. Some people want more than just this." She gestured around our kitchen. The kitchen I'd remodeled myself. The house I'd been paying for with my little business for 15 years. "What exactly is this, Sophie?" "You know what I mean." "No, I don't." "Explain it to me." She sighed dramatically. "This mediocre life, this going nowhere existence, some of us want to actually make something of ourselves." The spatula snapped in my hand. Sophie didn't even notice. She was back to typing on her phone, probably texting Ethan about how pathetic her husband was. "I'm going out," I said. "Whatever. I'll be working late anyway." I drove to Murphy's, the dive bar downtown, where my friend Vic held court most evenings. Vic Kowalski was a former cop who'd bought the place after taking early retirement. He'd also converted the back room into a boxing gym, where local kids learned to channel their anger into something productive. "You look like hell," Vic said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. I told him everything. The month of silence, the burner phone, the hotels, Sophie's contempt. Vic listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or refilling my glass. When I finished, he leaned back against the bar and studied me. "So what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. Divorce, I guess." "That's it? 20 years and you're just going to roll over?" "What else is there?" Vic smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Tom, you've been playing defense your whole marriage. Maybe it's time to try offense." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you want to make them pay? Hit them where it really hurts. Think like a bastard for once in your life." I stared into my beer. "I'm not like that, Vic." "Maybe that's your problem." The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a plan forming in the back of my mind. Sophie was already gone, of course. Another early meeting. I opened my laptop and started researching. Morrison Financial, Ethan Morrison, public records, social media, news articles. What I found was interesting. Morrison Financial had been in the news recently for some questionable investment practices. Nothing illegal, but enough to raise eyebrows. Ethan himself had been divorced twice, both times citing irreconcilable differences. His ex-wives had been remarkably quiet about the details. I also found something else. Camille Rodriguez, Sophie's best friend, and the head of HR at Morrison Financial, had been posting photos on social media from expensive restaurants and luxury spas. Interesting, considering her salary was public record as a city contractor. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "Working late again. Don't wait up." It was 10 in the morning. I forwarded the message to myself from the burner phone I'd kept. Then I drove to the Grandview Hotel. The desk clerk was a college kid with acne and an eager-to-please attitude. I spun him a story about being a private investigator working a cheating spouse case. Showed him a photo of Sophie and Ethan I'd printed from the burner phone. "Oh yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. They're regulars. Real sweet couple. Always room 247. How regular? Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past few months, sometimes Fridays too. I thanked him and drove to Morrison Financial. Ethan's BMW was in the reserved parking spot closest to the building. I sat in my truck across the street and waited. At noon, Ethan emerged with two other men in expensive suits. They walked to a restaurant 3 blocks away. I followed on foot, staying back. The restaurant was the kind of place that charged $30 for a steak sandwich. Through the window, I watched Ethan laugh and gesture while his companions nodded seriously. He looked relaxed, happy, like a man who had everything under control. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sophie. Might be very late tonight, big presentation tomorrow. It was Thursday, hotel day. I drove back to the Grandview and waited in the parking lot. At 4:30, Sophie's red Honda pulled in. She'd changed clothes since leaving for work. Gone was the conservative business suit, replaced by a tight black dress I'd never seen before. Ethan's BMW arrived 10 minutes later. I sat in my truck and watched them walk into the hotel together. Ethan's hand on the small of Sophie's back, Sophie laughing at something he said. They looked like a couple, a real couple. I drove home and waited. Sophie came in at 11:30, claiming she'd been in meetings until 10 and then grabbed dinner with Camille. She smelled like expensive cologne and hotel soap. "How was your day?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Fine. Fixed Mrs. Patterson's transmission, rotated tires on the Johnson's minivan. You know, my little job." She looked at me sharply. "Are you being sarcastic?" "Just answering your question." "Well, don't. It doesn't suit you." She headed upstairs. I heard the shower running for 20 minutes. The next morning, I was in the garage early when Lila came out to leave for school. My daughter had grown into a beautiful young woman, but lately she looked at me the same way Sophie did, like I was disappointing her just by existing. "Dad, can you drive me to school? Mom already left, and Madison can't pick me up." "Sure, honey." In the truck, Lila was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke up. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Why would you ask that? She's never home anymore, and when she is, you two barely talk. Your mom's just busy with work." "Dad." Lila turned to look at me. "I'm 17, not 7. I know when adults are lying." I pulled into the school parking lot and put the truck in park. "Your mom and I are going through a rough patch, but we're working on it." "Are you?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so grown up? When had she started seeing through the polite lies adults tell? "I'm trying, Lila." She nodded and got out of the truck. Before closing the door, she leaned back in. "Dad, whatever's going on, don't just give up, okay? You're worth fighting for." That afternoon, I was under the hood of a Chevy Silverado when someone cleared their throat behind me. I slid out to find Camille Rodriguez standing in my garage doorway. Camille was Sophie's age, but tried to dress younger. Today she wore a tight red dress and heels that clicked on my concrete floor. Her dark hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup looked like it had been applied by a professional. "Hello, Tom." "Camille, what brings you to my humble garage?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Can we talk, privately?" I wiped my hands and gestured to the small office in the corner of the garage. Camille followed me in, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. "I'm worried about Sophie," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Oh?" "She's been under a lot of stress lately. This project she's working on, it's really important, career-defining. So she keeps telling me, 'Tom, I need you to understand something. Sophie is on the verge of a major breakthrough, a promotion that could change everything for your family. But she needs support right now, not complications.'" I leaned back in my chair. "What kind of complications?" The kind that come from jealous husbands who don't understand the demands of a real career. There it was. The same contempt Sophie had been showing me, now coming from her best friend. I see. Do you? Because Sophie tells me you've been clingy lately, needy, asking questions about her schedule, wanting to spend more time together. She's trying to be patient, but what? But she needs space, Tom. She needs to focus. And if you can't give her that... Camille shrugged. Well, maybe you need to ask yourself what's more important, your ego or your wife's happiness. I stared at her. This woman who'd been in my home dozens of times, who'd eaten meals I'd cooked, drunk beer I'd bought, laughed at my jokes. This woman who was now sitting in my office, telling me I was the problem in my marriage. Anything else, Camille? Just think about what I said, Tom. Sophie deserves better than a husband who holds her back. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time. Then I picked up the burner phone and scrolled through the messages again. One exchange stood out. Tom's getting suspicious. He asked where I was yesterday. S. Maybe it's time to end this charade. Tell him you want a divorce. E. Not yet. I need to be smart about this. Camille says I should wait until after the promotion is finalized. S. Camille's right, but I'm getting tired of sneaking around. I want to be with you properly. E. Soon. Just a little longer. S. I screenshot the conversation and saved it to my phone. That evening, Sophie came home around 8. She seemed almost cheerful, humming as she poured herself a glass of wine. Good day? I asked. Very good. The project is coming together beautifully. Ethan thinks I have a real shot at the senior position. That's great, honey. She looked at me suspiciously. You're not going to ask me to spend the evening together? No guilt trips about working too much? Nope. I understand how important this is to you. Good. She seemed relieved. I'm glad you're finally getting it. She took her wine upstairs. I heard her on the phone a few minutes later, her voice low and intimate. She was laughing at something, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. I went out to the garage and worked on the Mustang until midnight. When I came back inside, Sophie was asleep, or pretending to be. The next week, I stopped trying. No more questions about her schedule. No more suggestions for dinner dates or movies. No more attempts at conversation. I got up early, went to work, came home, ate dinner alone, and went to bed. Sophie didn't seem to notice at first. She was too busy with her project. But by Thursday, something had changed. She kept glancing at me during the few minutes we were in the same room. Friday morning, she lingered in the kitchen while I made coffee. You're quiet lately, she said. Just busy with work. Everything okay? Fine. Why? She studied my face. You just seem different. I shrugged and headed for the garage. See you tonight. Tom. Her voice stopped me at the door. Are we okay? I turned back to look at her. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. Her hair was loose around her shoulders the way I liked it. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. We're fine, Sophie. You've got your important work. I've got mine. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. Or disappointment that I wasn't begging for her attention anymore. Okay, good. But she didn't sound like she thought it was good. That afternoon, while I was replacing brake pads on a customer's car, my phone rang. Sophie. Tom, can you pick up dinner tonight? I'll be home by 7. It was the first time in weeks she'd asked me to do anything domestic. The first time she'd committed to being home at a specific time. Sure, what do you want? Surprise me. I picked up Chinese food from our old favorite place downtown. Sophie was already home when I arrived, changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater. She'd even set the table. This smells great, she said, unpacking the containers. We ate in relative silence, but I caught her watching me several times. Finally, she spoke up. How was your day? Good. Busy. What did you work on? I told her about the brake job, a transmission rebuild, and the progress on the Mustang. She nodded and asked follow-up questions, something she hadn't done in months. You love that car, she said. It's a good project. Remember when we used to go to car shows, before Lila was born? I remembered. We'd drive to shows all over the state, looking at classic cars and dreaming about the ones we'd restore someday. Sophie used to know the difference between a 427 and a 454 engine. She used to get excited about finding original parts at swap meets. That was a long time ago. Not that long. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Maybe we could go to one again sometime. The spring show season is starting soon. I looked down at her hand on mine. Her wedding ring caught the light from the kitchen fixture. The same ring I'd saved for 3 months to buy when we were 22. Maybe. She smiled, and for a moment it felt like old times. Then her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. I have to make a quick call, she said, pulling her hand back. She went upstairs. I heard her voice through the ceiling, low and urgent. When she came back down 20 minutes later, the moment was gone. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just work stuff. The next morning, I found another note. Emergency meeting, back late Sunday. It was Friday. Sunday evening, Sophie came home with bags from expensive stores I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. When I didn't comment, she seemed almost disappointed. Aren't you going to ask where I've been? I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile from Friday night. This was something else entirely. So, she said, settling into her chair at the kitchen table. Lesson learned? The way she said it made my blood run cold, like she'd been conducting an experiment and I was the lab rat. What lesson is that? Her smile widened. That I don't need you chasing after me like a lost puppy. That I can come and go as I please without you questioning me or making demands. That you finally understand your place in this relationship. I stared at her. This woman I'd loved for half my life was sitting in our kitchen, smirking at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. My place? Yes. Your place. You provide for me and Lila. You keep the house running. You don't ask questions about things that don't concern you. And in return, I don't have to listen to your whining about spending time together or working too much. The kitchen was completely silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Is that what you think our marriage is? That's what our marriage has always been, Tom. You were just too needy to see it before. She stood up and gathered her shopping bags. I'm glad we finally understand each other. As she walked toward the stairs, I spoke quietly. Sophie. She turned back, that smirk still on her face. Lesson learned. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the public library downtown. I spent 4 hours researching everything I could find about Morrison Financial, Ethan Morrison, and Camille Rodriguez. What I discovered was interesting. Morrison Financial had been quietly investigated by the SEC 6 months ago for some questionable investment practices. Nothing came of it, but the investigation had been thorough. Ethan's personal finances showed some unusual patterns, large cash deposits that didn't match his reported income. Camille was even more interesting. Her social media showed a lifestyle well beyond her means. Designer clothes, expensive vacations, jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. Yet her salary as an HR director was public record, and it wasn't nearly enough to support her spending habits. I also found something else. Marriage records showed that Ethan's first wife had filed for divorce, citing cruel and unusual behavior. The second wife's filing mentioned financial impropriety and emotional abuse. Both settlements had been sealed, but court records showed substantial alimony payments. I printed everything and drove home. Sophie's car was gone, of course. I went to my office in the garage and spread the papers across my desk. My phone rang. Vic. How you holding up? I'm done playing defense. About time. What do you need? Information and maybe a favor or two. I'm listening. I told him what I'd found and what I suspected. Vic listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. So, you think the best friend is in on it? I think she's been orchestrating it. Sophie's not smart enough to plan something this elaborate on her own. What's your play? I'm going to give them exactly what they want, and then I'm going to take it all away. That evening, Sophie came home in a good mood. She was humming again, and she'd brought takeout from an expensive restaurant downtown. I thought we could have a nice dinner, she said, unpacking containers of food I couldn't pronounce. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to have dinner with my husband? I watched her moving around the kitchen. She was wearing a new dress, and her hair had been professionally styled. She looked beautiful, and she knew it. How was work? Excellent. The project is almost finished. Ethan thinks I'm a shoo-in for the promotion. That's great. It really is. She sat down across from me. Tom, I know things have been strained between us lately, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your support. My support. Yes, your understanding about the long hours, the travel, the pressure I've been under. Not every husband would be so accommodating. The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. I'm just trying to be a good husband. You are. She reached across and squeezed my hand. And when I get this promotion, things will be different. Better. We'll be able to afford some of the things we've always wanted. Like what? A bigger house. Maybe in the Hills development. Lila could go to private school for her senior year. We could travel. The Hills was the expensive new development on the north side of town. Houses started at $500,000. That sounds nice? It will be. She squeezed my hand again. I know you've sacrificed a lot for this family, Tom, working in that garage instead of pursuing your dreams, but it's going to pay off. After dinner, Sophie suggested we watch a movie. She curled up next to me on the couch, something she hadn't done in months. During the romantic scenes, she kept glancing at me, gauging my reaction. When the movie ended, she turned to face me. Tom? Yeah? I love you. You know that, right? I looked into her blue eyes, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married. All I saw was calculation. I love you too, Sophie. She smiled and kissed me. It was the first time in weeks, and it felt like kissing a stranger. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. But she'd left a note. Thank you for last night. You're a good man, Tom. I crumpled the note and threw it away. At work, I called Vic. I need you to follow someone. Who? Camille Rodriguez, Sophie's friend. I want to know where she goes, who she meets with, what she does. What am I looking for? Proof that she's not as innocent as she pretends to be. I'll start today. That afternoon, while I was working on a customer's car, Lila came by the garage. She did that sometimes when she needed to talk or just wanted to hang out away from the tension at home. Hey, Dad. Hey, kiddo. How was school? Boring. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. She sat down on an old stool I kept in the corner. Are you and Mom really working things out? I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. Why do you ask? She's been different lately. Nicer to you. But it doesn't feel real. My 17-year-old daughter was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. What do you mean? It's like she's acting, like she's trying to prove something, but I don't know what. I wiped my hands on a rag and sat down on another stool facing her. Lila, what do you know about your mom's work situation? Just that she's been working on some big project with her boss. She thinks she's going to get promoted. Has she said anything else? About the future or changes coming? Lila frowned. She mentioned something about moving to a bigger house, and she asked me how I'd feel about switching schools for my senior year. What did you tell her? That I didn't want to switch schools. All my friends are here. But she said sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the family. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. When did she say this? Last week. Dad, we're not really moving, are we? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Vic. I've got something, he said. Can you meet me at the bar? I'll be right there. I told Lila I had to run an errand and drove to Murphy's. Vic was waiting in his office behind the bar, a manila folder on his desk. Your friend Camille is a busy woman, he said, opening the folder. The photos showed Camille meeting with various people around town, business lunches, coffee dates, conversations in parking lots. Recognize any of these people? I studied the photos. That's Jim Patterson from the city planning office, and that's Maria Santos from the bank. Keep looking. The next photo made me sit up straight. Camille was handing an envelope to a man I recognized as a reporter from the local newspaper. What do you think was in that envelope? Information or money, maybe both. Vic pulled out another set of photos. These showed Camille at expensive restaurants and shops, always paying with cash. She's got money coming from somewhere, he said, more than her salary would cover. Any idea where? Working on it. But Tom, there's something else. He pulled out one final photo. Camille and Ethan, sitting in his BMW in the parking lot of a motel on the outskirts of town. They were clearly arguing about something. When was this taken? Yesterday afternoon. I stared at the photo. So, Camille and Ethan are working together. Looks like it. Question is, what's their end game? I thought about Sophie's comments about moving, about Lila switching schools, about the expensive house in the hills. I think they're planning to push me out entirely. What do you mean? Think about it. Sophie gets the promotion, more money, higher status. Suddenly, she doesn't need the mechanic husband anymore. She can afford to divorce me and start fresh with Ethan. But why involve Camille? Because Camille's the one with the connections. She knows how to manipulate the system, how to make things happen behind the scenes. Vic nodded slowly. So what's your move? I'm going to let them think their plan is working. And then I'm going to destroy them all. That evening, Sophie came home with champagne and steaks from the expensive butcher shop downtown. What are we celebrating? I asked. The promotion is official. They're announcing it tomorrow, but Ethan gave me the heads up today. She was practically glowing with excitement. This was the happiest I'd seen her in months. Congratulations. You've worked hard for this. I have, and it's going to change everything for us, Tom. Everything. She cooked the steaks herself, something she hadn't done in years. Over dinner, she talked about her plans for the new position, the increased salary, the opportunities for advancement. There might be some travel involved, she said. Regional meetings, conferences, that sort of thing. How much travel? A few days a month? Maybe a week or two at a time for the bigger conferences? I nodded, like this was perfectly reasonable. And Tom, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we made some changes. What kind of changes? Well, with my new salary, we could afford to hire someone to help you with the garage. Maybe even think about expanding. Expanding how? A bigger location, more employees. You could focus on the business side instead of getting your hands dirty every day. I almost laughed. Sophie had never shown any interest in my business before. Now she wanted to help me expand it? That's an interesting idea. I'm glad you think so, because I've already talked to Camille about it. She knows some people who might be interested in investing. There it was, the trap, laid out so carefully I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking for it. Investors? Silent partners. People with money who want to help local businesses grow. What would they want in return? Just a fair return on their investment. Standard business practice. I nodded thoughtfully. Let me think about it. Of course, there's no rush. But I could see in her eyes that there was a rush. They wanted to move quickly before I had time to think too hard about what they were really offering. After dinner, Sophie suggested we go for a walk. We hadn't done that in years, but I agreed. We walked through our neighborhood, past houses where we'd lived our entire adult lives, where we'd raised our daughter, where everyone knew us as Tom and Sophie Jenkins, the couple who'd been together since high school. "It's a nice neighborhood," Sophie said. "But don't you ever want something more?" "More how?" "Bigger, better, more prestigious." "I like our house." "It's small, Tom, and old. The Hills development has houses with 3-car garages, swimming pools, security systems." "Sounds expensive." "With my new salary and the right investments in your business, we could afford it." We walked in silence for a while. Then Sophie stopped and turned to face me. "Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay?" "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "With your life, with our marriage, with the way things are." I looked at her standing there in the streetlight, beautiful and earnest and completely false. "Are you happy, Sophie?" "I asked you first." "I'm content." "Content." She repeated the word like it tasted bad. "That's not the same thing as happy." "No, it's not." "I want to be happy, Tom. Really, truly happy. Don't you want that too?" "Of course." "Good, because I think we can be. But it might require some changes, some sacrifices." "What kind of sacrifices?" She took my hand. "Trust me?" I looked down at our joined hands. Her wedding ring was still there, but it felt like a costume piece now, part of the performance. "I trust you, Sophie." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Then everything's going to be perfect." The announcement of Sophie's promotion made the local business section of the newspaper. "Local woman breaks glass ceiling at Morrison Financial," the headline read. There was a photo of Sophie shaking hands with Ethan, both of them smiling broadly. I read the article twice, noting how it emphasized Sophie's innovative approaches to client relations and her unique ability to build lasting partnerships. The reporter had clearly been fed talking points. That evening, Sophie came home with flowers and another bottle of champagne. "Did you see the article?" she asked, practically bouncing with excitement. I did. Very impressive. "Ethan says it's just the beginning. There are already people talking about me for regional positions." She poured champagne into 2 glasses and handed me one. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." We clinked glasses, and I watched her face as she drank. She looked like a woman who'd won the lottery. "Tom, I want to talk to you about those investors I mentioned." "Okay." "Camille set up a meeting for tomorrow, just informal, to see if there might be a fit." "Tomorrow's pretty short notice." "I know, but they're very busy people. We should strike while the iron is hot." I nodded. "Where's the meeting?" "Morrison Financial, conference room B, 2 o'clock. Of course it was at Morrison Financial, on their turf, with their people. "Should I bring anything? Financial statements? Business plans?" "Just yourself. This is more of a get-to-know-you meeting." The next day, I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Lila's school awards ceremonies and Sophie's office Christmas parties. It was 5 years old and a little tight, but it was respectable. Morrison Financial occupied 3 floors of the newest office building downtown. The lobby was all marble and glass, with abstract art that probably cost more than most people's cars. Camille met me at the elevator, wearing a black power suit that screamed expensive. "Tom, you look wonderful. Thank you so much for coming." "Thanks for setting this up." "Of course, Sophie's success is important to all of us." The elevator rose smoothly to the 15th floor. Camille chattered about the weather, the building, anything except what we were really there to discuss. Conference room B was at the end of a long hallway lined with offices. Through the glass walls, I could see Sophie at her new desk, talking animatedly on the phone. She waved when she saw me. "Here we are," Camille said, opening the door. 3 people were seated around a polished conference table. Ethan Morrison sat at the head, looking perfectly at ease in his natural environment. To his right was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. To his left, a younger man with the kind of tan that came from expensive vacations. "Tom Jenkins," Ethan said, standing to shake my hand. "Congratulations on your wife's promotion. She's a remarkable woman." "She is. Please sit. Can we get you coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great." Camille poured from a silver service and placed the cup in front of me. The china was so thin I was afraid I'd break it. "Tom," Ethan said, settling back into his chair, "let me introduce you to my colleagues. This is Margaret Whitman. She specializes in small business development. And this is David Chen, our investment analyst." I shook hands with both of them, noting how they studied me like I was a specimen under a microscope. "So," Margaret said, opening a leather portfolio, "Camille tells us you own an auto repair business." "That's right. Jenkins Auto Repair. I've been in business for 15 years. "Impressive longevity," David said. "What's your annual revenue?" I gave them the numbers, watching their faces for reactions. They remained professionally neutral. "And your client base?" Margaret asked. "Mostly local, some commercial accounts. I've built a reputation for quality work and fair prices." "Admirable," Ethan said, "but perhaps limiting." "How so?" "Well, there's only so much growth potential in a local market. What if we could help you expand? Multiple locations, broader service offerings, maybe even franchising opportunities?" I sipped my coffee and tried to look interested. "That would require significant capital." "Which is where we come in," Margaret said. "We're always looking for solid local businesses with growth potential." "What would you want in return?" "Standard partnership arrangement," David said. "We provide capital and business expertise. You provide the operational knowledge and local connections." "What percentage are we talking about?" The 3 of them exchanged glances. Ethan leaned forward. "Tom, let's be frank. Your business is profitable but small. You're essentially buying yourself a job, not building wealth. With our backing, you could be looking at 10 times your current revenue within 2 years. That sounds almost too good to be true. The best opportunities often do, Margaret said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We'd need controlling interest, David added, 60% to ensure proper management oversight. There it was. They wanted to own my business. That's a lot to give up. But think about what you'd be gaining, Ethan said. Financial security, time to spend with your family, the chance to be more than just a mechanic. The way he said just a mechanic made my jaw clench, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd need to think about it. Of course, Margaret said. But Tom, opportunities like this don't come along often. We'd hate for you to miss out because you waited too long. How long are we talking about? We'd need an answer by Friday, Ethan said. We have other opportunities we're considering. Friday was 3 days away. I understand. Excellent. Ethan stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Tom, I hope you'll seriously consider this. Sophie is very excited about the possibilities. I shook hands with all of them and followed Camille back to the elevator. What do you think? She asked as we descended. It's a lot to process. Tom, can I speak frankly? Sure. Sophie is going places, big places. This promotion is just the beginning. She's going to need a partner who can keep up with her success. What's that supposed to mean? It means that staying small and local might work for you, but it won't work for her. She needs a husband who's building something significant, not just maintaining the status quo. The elevator opened at the lobby level. Camille put her hand on my arm. Don't let pride get in the way of progress, Tom. Sophie deserves a husband who's as ambitious as she is. I drove back to my garage in a fog of anger and disbelief. They weren't just trying to steal my wife. They wanted to take my business too. Everything I'd built, everything I was proud of, they wanted to own and control. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking lot. Vic. How'd the meeting go? About like you'd expect. They want 60% of my business. Jesus, what did you tell them? that I'd think about it. Good. Tom, I've got more information about your friend Camille. Can you meet me tonight? Yeah. Sophie's working late anyway. She say that? She says that every night. That evening, I met Vic at Murphy's after closing time. The bar was empty except for us, and Vic had spread more files across a corner table. Your instincts were right, he said. Camille's been playing a long game. How long? At least 2 years. Look at this. He showed me bank records, photocopies, but clearly authentic. How did you get these? I still have friends in law enforcement. Camille's been making regular cash deposits for 2 years, always under $10,000, always in cash. To avoid reporting requirements. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. The deposits correlate with Morrison Financial's big client acquisitions. I studied the timeline. Every time Morrison Financial landed a major new account, Camille made a deposit within a few days. She's getting kickbacks. Vic watched me closely, the way he always did when things crossed from bad into dangerous. He didn't interrupt. He didn't caution me. He simply waited, giving me space to let the idea finish forming. You're thinking too calmly for someone who just found out his life's been scripted by other people, he finally said. That's because the panic already happened, I replied. This part is clarity. I gathered the documents into neat stacks, aligning the edges until they were perfectly square. It was a small, pointless act, but it helped anchor me. The chaos wasn't inside the papers anymore. It was inside the people who thought they were untouchable. First, I said, I need to look predictable. Vic raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning Sophie needs to think I'm breaking, that I'm overwhelmed, that I'm ready to negotiate, to compromise, to save the marriage at any cost. I looked up at him. She needs to believe she's winning. And Camille, especially Camille. People like her don't move unless they think the board is clear. Vic leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You realize once you step into this, there's no clean exit. They won't forgive being outplayed. I'm not looking for forgiveness, I said. I'm looking for finality. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. All right. Then we do this methodically. He pulled a legal pad toward him and flipped to a blank page. If you're going to give them what they want, you need to control the timing. When do you pretend to lose? Soon, I said, but not all at once. First, the business. Vic's pen paused. You're serious about letting that go? On paper, I corrected. I'll make it look like I'm preparing to sell. I'll let rumors spread that cash flow is tight, that the stress is getting to me. Sophie already believes I'm emotionally compromised. This will fit her narrative. And Camille will push, Vic said, catching on. She won't be able to resist accelerating things. Exactly. She'll encourage Sophie to force my hand, to demand concessions, to make me feel cornered. Vic smiled thinly. People like Camille confuse pressure with power. I leaned forward. Once they think I'm desperate, they'll stop being careful. That's when they'll make mistakes. Vic started writing. You'll need records, communications, anything that shows coordination between them. I already have some, I said. Texts Sophie thought were deleted. Emails forwarded to the wrong address. Camille's not as clean as she thinks. And Ethan? I shrugged. Ethan's a means to an end. He thinks he's the prize. Men like him always do. Vic exhaled slowly. You're talking about dismantling an entire network. They built it quietly, I said. I'll take it apart the same way. There was a knock at the office door. We both froze for half a second before Vic called out, Give me a minute. The knock faded. The world outside kept moving, blissfully unaware that 3 lives were about to implode under their own arrogance. Vic looked back at me. You need to be ready for collateral damage. I know, I said, but none of this happens unless they chose it first. He nodded again, this time more solemnly. Then we document everything, every meeting, every demand, every attempt to pressure you into dependency. And when they finally push too far, I added, we let the truth surface all at once. Vic tapped the legal pad. Publicly? Strategically, I said. Not loud, just undeniable. Silence settled between us, thick but steady. I realized something then that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the wild, reckless way I'd been before. This was colder, sharper, focused. Tom, Vic said quietly, this is the point where most people either reclaim their lives or lose themselves completely. I met his gaze. I'm not losing myself. I'm taking myself back. He closed the folder and stood. All right. Then the first step is simple. Go home, act tired, act unsure. Let Sophie see the cracks. And Camille? Vic smirked. She'll hear about them. Trust me. As I stood to leave, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not because things were fixed, but because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. At the door, I paused. Vic? Yeah? When this is over, I don't want revenge. He gave a knowing half smile. No? I want consequence. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut between the buildings, bright and unforgiving. I welcomed it. Let it see everything. Let it illuminate the truth they thought they'd buried under charm and manipulation. They wanted control. They wanted proximity. They wanted my independence dismantled piece by piece. I'd give them exactly what they asked for. And when they reached for it, confident and smiling, I'd remove the ground beneath their feet and walk away while they tried to understand how the game had ended without them noticing the final move. Thursday morning, I called Ethan's office. Mr. Morrison, this is Tom Jenkins. I've made my decision about the investment opportunity. Excellent, Tom. What did you decide? I'm in. When can we make it official? There was a pause, like he hadn't expected it to be that easy. Well, that's wonderful news. Can you come in this afternoon? Say 3 o'clock? I'll be there. Tom, you're making the right choice. This is going to be the beginning of something big. I hung up and called Vic. It's time. You sure about this? I'm sure. Is everything ready on your end? Ready and waiting. Tom, once we do this, there's no going back. Good. I don't want to go back. That afternoon, I returned to Morrison Financial. This time, I was escorted to Ethan's corner office, which had a view of the entire downtown area. Ethan sat behind a desk that probably cost more than most people's cars, with Camille and David Chen flanked on either side. Tom! Ethan stood and came around the desk to shake my hand. I'm so glad you decided to move forward. It seems like a good opportunity. It's a great opportunity. David has the contracts ready for your review. David slid a thick folder across the desk. I opened it and pretended to read through the legal language, though Vic and I had already gone through similar documents with a lawyer friend of his. This looks comprehensive, I said. We believe in being thorough, Camille said. No surprises down the road. I appreciate that. There's just one thing. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh? I'd like my wife to be here when I sign. This affects her too, and I want her to be part of it. Of course, Ethan said smoothly. Sophie should absolutely be involved. Camille, could you ask her to join us? Camille left the office and returned a few minutes later with Sophie, who looked surprised but pleased. Tom, I didn't know you were here. I wanted to surprise you. She came over and kissed my cheek, playing the loving wife perfectly. So you've decided to move forward with the investment? She asked. We have. I think it's exactly what we need. Sophie beamed. This is so exciting. Tom, this could change everything for us. It certainly could. Ethan handed me a pen. Shall we make it official? I took the pen and positioned it over the signature line. Then I stopped. Actually, before I sign this, there's something I'd like to show everyone. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. What's that? Camille asked, and I heard a note of worry in her voice. Just some documents I thought you might find interesting. I opened the envelope and spread the contents across Ethan's desk. Bank records, hotel receipts, photographs, phone records, everything Vic and I had compiled over the past weeks. The room went completely silent. Sophie was the first to speak. "Tom, what is this?" "Evidence," I said calmly. "Evidence of a conspiracy to defraud me of my business and destroy my marriage." Ethan's face had gone pale. "Tom, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. You've been having an affair with my wife for 6 months. Camille's been taking kickbacks from your business deals, and all three of you have been planning to push me out of my own life." "That's ridiculous," Camille said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? Then explain these bank deposits. Explain these hotel receipts. Explain this." I pulled out the burner phone and set it on the desk. Sophie's face went white. "Where did you get that?" "You left it in your gym bag. Very careless." I scrolled to the text message thread and began reading aloud. "Tom's clueless. Too busy with his little cars to notice anything." "That's you, Sophie." "Good. Keep it that way. What we have is too good to risk." "That's you, Ethan." "Tom, please," Sophie said, reaching for my arm. "Let me explain." I pulled away from her. "Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been planning to steal my business? How you've been laughing at me behind my back? It's not like that. It's exactly like that." I turned to face Ethan. "Did you really think I was stupid enough to sign over 60% of my business to you? Tom, you're upset. Let's sit down and talk about this rationally." "I am being rational. For the first time in months, I'm thinking clearly." I gathered up the documents and put them back in the envelope. "Here's what's going to happen. Sophie, you're going to pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight." "Tom, you can't be serious." "I'm dead serious. Ethan, you're going to transfer Sophie to another office, far away from here. And Camille, you're going to resign from Morrison Financial and find somewhere else to run your little schemes." "You can't make us do anything," Camille said, trying to sound defiant. "Can't I?" I smiled. "Because I'm thinking the SEC would be very interested in these bank records, and the IRS would love to know about all that unreported income. And I'm sure the local newspaper would find it fascinating that the head of HR at Morrison Financial has been taking bribes." "You're bluffing," Ethan said. "Am I?" I pulled out my phone. "Should I call the reporter now, or would you prefer to handle this quietly?" The three of them looked at each other, and I could see the panic in their eyes. "What do you want?" Sophie asked quietly. "I want you out of my life. All of you. I want to never see any of you again." "And if we agree?" "Then this stays between us. But if any of you ever come near me or my daughter again, if you ever try to contact me or interfere in my life, all of this goes public. Do we understand each other?" They nodded, looking like children who'd been caught stealing. "Good." I stood up and headed for the door. "Sophie, you have until tonight to get your things. After that, anything left in the house goes to charity." I walked out of the office and took the elevator down to the lobby. My hands were shaking, but I felt more alive than I had in months. Outside, I called Vic. "How'd it go?" "Better than I hoped. They folded completely." "What now?" "Now I go home and start over." That evening, Sophie came to the house with Camille to pack her things. I stayed in the garage, working on the Mustang, while they loaded boxes into Camille's car. Around 9 o'clock, Sophie came out to the garage alone. "Tom, can we talk?" I didn't look up from the engine. "Nothing to talk about." "Please, just for a minute." I wiped my hands and faced her. She'd been crying and her makeup was smeared. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" "I don't know. I was confused and lonely, and Camille kept telling me I deserved better." "So this is Camille's fault?" No, it's my fault. I made the choices. But Tom, I love you. I've always loved you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The safe, reliable husband who pays the bills and doesn't ask questions. But you don't love me. That's not true. Sophie, you spent 6 months lying to me. You planned to steal my business and leave me with nothing. You were going to move across the street from your co-conspirator so you could keep manipulating me. That's not love. She was crying harder now. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can start over. No, we can't, because I don't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing. Tom, please, I'll do anything. I looked at her standing there in my garage, the place where I'd built something real and honest with my own hands. She looked small and pathetic and completely foreign to me. There's nothing you can do, Sophie. It's over. She nodded and walked back toward the house. A few minutes later, I heard car doors slamming and engines starting. Then silence. I went back to work on the Mustang. It was going to be beautiful when I finished it. Classic lines, powerful engine, honest craftsmanship. Everything my marriage hadn't been. Around midnight, Lila came out to the garage. Dad? Are you okay? I looked up at my daughter. She was wearing pajamas and her hair was messy, like she'd been trying to sleep. I'm fine, kiddo. Mom's stuff is gone. I know. Are you getting divorced? Yes. She nodded like she'd been expecting it. Good. Good? Dad, I knew something was wrong. Mom was different, mean, and she was lying about something, I could tell. I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm not. I'm glad it's over. She came over and hugged me. You deserve better than someone who doesn't appreciate you. I hugged her back, and for the first time in months, I felt like everything was going to be okay. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to be a family of 2. I'd like that. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in months without dreading the day ahead. Sophie's closet was empty, her bathroom counter clear of the expensive cosmetics and perfumes she'd accumulated. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper in blessed silence. No phone calls, no urgent emails, no passive-aggressive comments about my little job. My phone rang. Vic. Morning. How you feeling? Like I can breathe again. Good. Tom, there's something you should know. Word's already getting around town about what happened. What kind of word? The kind that says Ethan Morrison got caught with his pants down and his hand in the cookie jar. Camille's already packed up and left town. And Sophie, well, let's just say her promotion might not be as secure as she thought. What do you mean? Turns out the SEC investigation into Morrison Financial isn't as closed as everyone thought. With Camille gone and the affair becoming public knowledge, some people are asking questions about how that promotion really happened. I felt a twinge of something that might have been sympathy for Sophie, but it passed quickly. That's not my problem anymore. No, it's not. Tom, you did good. You stood up for yourself. Thanks, Vic. For everything. Don't mention it. What are you going to do now? I looked around my kitchen, my house, my life that was finally my own again. I'm going to finish that Mustang, and then I'm going to take my daughter for a drive. 2 weeks later, I was in the garage when a car pulled into my lot. I looked up to see Sophie getting out of her Honda, which looked like it needed a wash and probably some mechanical attention. She walked into the garage hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. Hello, Tom. Sophie. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her expensive clothes had been replaced with jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail and she wasn't wearing much makeup. I wanted to apologize. Properly. Okay. And I wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything. I set down my wrench and gave her my full attention. Ethan fired me, she said. The day after you confronted us. Said I was a liability. And the promotion, it turns out it was never real. He was just using it to string me along. I'm sorry. No, you're not. And you shouldn't be. I did this to myself. She looked around the garage. I forgot who I was, Tom. I forgot where I came from. I let Camille convince me that what we had wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. For you. It should have been. You're a good man. You built something real here, and I threw it away for nothing. We stood there in silence for a moment. I'm not asking you to take me back, she said finally. I know it's too late for that. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost. What will you do now? I got a job at the bank downtown. Nothing fancy, but it's honest work. And I'm looking for an apartment. What about Lila? She's made it clear she wants to stay with you. I can't say I blame her. Sophie walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Tom, that lesson you taught me? I learned it. Finally. After she left, I went back to work on the Mustang. It was almost finished now. Just a few more details, and it would be ready for its first real drive. That evening, Lila and I had dinner together at the kitchen table. She told me about school, her friends, her plans for college. I told her about my day, the cars I'd worked on, the progress on the Mustang. Dad, she said as we were cleaning up, are you happy? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, kiddo, I think I am. Good. You deserve to be happy. Later that night, I stood in my garage looking at the completed Mustang. It was beautiful, classic lines, perfect paint, an engine that purred like a contented cat. It had taken me months of patient work, but it was worth it. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones you build yourself, with your own hands, one piece at a time. I turned off the lights and headed inside. Tomorrow, Lila and I would take the Mustang for its first real drive. We'd cruise through town with the windows down and the radio up, and everyone would see that Tom Jenkins was doing just fine.